Ladies and gentlemen, the New Orleans Saints suffered a devastating loss against the Los Angeles Rams, and unsurprisingly, Derek Carr haters are trying to put everything all on him. But the truth about what happened last night may shock you. Plus, we got more players making cryptic posts on social media after the L. For the first time in a while, the once great defense might be even worse than the offense this time around.
A roster that's getting a little older, getting a little slower, still really expensive, off the edge, probably not as fast and twitchy as you would like.
And despite all the drama in the air, Derek Carr and the Saints can still make the playoffs and win the division. We'll also discuss a shocking new report on head coach Dennis Allen's job security. All this and more will be discussed, so make sure you subscribe to me, Wi-Fi Willie, for more content. There were great highs for the New Orleans Saints in this game. Derek Carr was doing the Dougie, having a good time celebrating a touchdown. Saints really had some opportunities to win this game, but overall they lost this matchup in the trenches. Derek Carr was under pressure the majority of the time, and Matthew Stafford was able to effortlessly throw some touchdowns, throw some crossing patterns, and the guy had all day. Matthew Stafford had so much time that he even had enough time to throw some incompletions of his own, and also had a ball slip out of his hands. The Rams could have scored even more points if it wasn't for some of their own self-inflicted wounds, drop passes by Cooper Kupp, and those passes by Matthew Stafford we just mentioned. If you scour the internet and see the quick, lazy, hot take reaction to this game, which is that, oh, LOL, Derek Carr sucks, he threw an interception, even though the guy was under duress the whole time, and he was not the main issue with that football game. The overall team of the Rams just looked better than the New Orleans Saints. If you would swap quarterbacks, put Matthew Stafford on the New Orleans Saints, then put Derek Carr on the LA Rams, seems like you would get the same result. And that is why when you take into account some of the blunders we'll get into, and you take into account the offensive line play, PFF, Pro Football Focus, has rated Derek Carr again the highest rated player on offense for the New Orleans Saints. He previously had a high grade against the New York Giants and even had a high grade against the Detroit Lions. Some Saints fans and some Derek Carr haters cannot wrap their mind around this, but it's quite obvious when you take a look at what happened on the offensive side of the football. Chris Olave has been an amazing player this year and also in this game, but he was coming off an ankle injury and it really got to the guy, and it was quite unfortunate. I don't want to hate on the guy too much because there were moments when him and Carr were clicking, Carr under pressure, avoiding the pressure, hitting Olave on a huge pass. They looked great together in this game. And there was a key moment when they really had a shot to get a lead over the LA Rams, and it would have been significant right before halftime. They were moving down the field. Derek Carr was clicking with Chris Olave in the hurry-up offense. But then Chris Olave on a key 3rd and 5, you're in Rams territory. There's a minute left in the second quarter. He had a bad drop here on the slant. Carr put a little bit of too much mustard on it and put a little bit on his other shoulder. It would have been better to be more on his outside shoulder, but at the end of the day, you gotta catch that pass. Many people were critical of Chris Olave. Carr was trying to blame himself on that play, pointing to himself saying, hey, that one's on me. I do think he was getting the ball out a little too quick sometimes because of the pressure that was happening during the game for Derek Carr. The offensive line giving him no time. We'll get more into that. But ultimately, this was a key miscue for both guys. Both guys could have done a little bit better to make this play happen, and then that's a conversion. And this was not the first drop that we saw by Chris Olave in this game. We saw a drop that happened a little bit earlier in the game. At the top of the second quarter, he had a shot. The defender was just playing tight on him and made a play, but he still nonetheless had an opportunity to reel that football in. And then we saw later on in the third quarter on a key 3rd and 7, Chris Olave has a drop that happened, and yeah, he wouldn't have gotten the first down anyways on this play, but the Saints would end up going for it anyways on 4th down. If he would have caught the ball, this would have made that 4th down try a 4th and 2 instead of a 4th and 7. But I don't want to hate too much because these guys were clicking the majority of the game, getting some huge plays, and they've been clicking the past few weeks, to be completely honest. There have been some moments when there's been some frustration and some ups and downs between the two on the sideline. People talk about it, but you see them coming together more and taking ownership. Derek Carr pointing to himself saying my bad on that earlier 3rd down throw, and then Chris Olave, when he ended up tripping, he ended up pointing to himself, pointing there, sort of saying, hey, my bad, I just ended up tripping, oh well. And it just sucks because you know the ankle injury is bothering the guy. They'd probably be 100% otherwise, but these were just some key mistakes at the wrong time. The Saints were able to move the football down the field, and we talked about some of the big plays. Carr had a huge touchdown to the speedster Rashid Shaheed, where they did do a little dance there. But you saw some success. You saw them be able to move the football down the field. What really hurt the the Saints was on 4th down. They ended up electing to go for it on 4th down. The Saints went 0 for 3 on 4th down in Rams territory, did not convert once. We'll get into what happened there, but the bigger problem with the Saints offense in this game was that their offensive line just could not protect Derek Carr. Aaron Donald was coming in, getting some pressure on the quarterback. Part of the reason why it was so easy for the Rams to get pressure on Derek Carr was because the Saints were not a balanced offense. They had absolutely no run game, and they have not had a run game much at all with Mr. Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is clearly on the decline of his career. He's averaging 3.8 yards a carry on the year and was only 2.1 yards a carry in this game and 19 yards rushing the football, 16 yards receiving. On top of that, the guy has an attitude. He seems a little checked out. He's been very critical of the coaching staff and has thrown some slight shade here and there throughout the season in his press conferences. He even made a cryptic post on social media. I don't know what this emoji is supposed to mean, but this guy is supposed to be a leader on the team, as a veteran. He's supposed to be one of the all-time great Saints. I don't think that's the right behavior to have. When you got 2 games left, you could still make the playoffs. You really want to be making some cryptic tweets when you did not have your best game at all whatsoever. I will give Alvin Kamara a pass on some of these runs up the middle. The offensive line is doing horrible run blocking, and he doesn't really have a shot on many of these plays. Running up the middle for a loss, running up the middle for no gain. But on some of these outside runs, you could just see the lack of effort from Alvin Kamara, and maybe it's not a lack of effort. Maybe he just doesn't have the speed anymore, and that's what I've been thinking. On some of these runs, there are clear opportunities where he could go outside. He could maybe get an extra yard, but he is just too slow where defensive linemen are able to catch him, linebackers are able to catch him. You might be thinking, okay, you can't kill him with your speed, maybe you can break some tackles, but that's not exactly happening at all whatsoever for Alvin Kamara. Catching the football, can he break a tackle? No, it doesn't happen. Even a defensive back, a safety, is able to bring this guy down by themselves, and it just seems like you rarely ever see the guy break a tackle. This is somebody who touts themselves as a Christian McCaffrey. Maybe he was at some point, but it does not seem like that's the case today in 2023. There were 2 plays in particular where I just felt like Alvin Kamara showed that he had a lack of effort, and this is when the Saints and Derek Carr have an opportunity to still fight in this football game. Like we mentioned, Derek Carr was pressured all game, and here's a moment when the corner is blitzing in Derek Carr's face instantly, and he has to get the ball off quickly to Alvin Kamara. Kamara has absolutely no effort in trying to reel this ball in. He barely puts his arm up, doesn't seem like he's trying too much, and on the very next play, you saw another example of a lack of effort, and this is when Derek Carr threw his interception. Like we mentioned before, people are dogging the guy for this interception, but what really happened here? The guy had pressure in his face. This linebacker is going head to head against Alvin Kamara, and Kamara doesn't put much of a block on this guy at all, and this is after the lack of an attempt to catch the pass on the play previously. This leads to Derek Carr making a throw with tons of pressure in his face, not able to get much air on that ball, and it is easily intercepted. Carr probably shouldn't have thrown that pass anyways. I felt like the coverage was there for the Rams, but this was a key critical 3rd down, and he was getting desperate late in the game. PFF graded Carr highly because he did have a pretty good clean game outside of that interception. There were moments when maybe you wanted more from the guy. I saw him take a sack early in the game, and I thought he could have fought more to get out of the pressure, but there were defensive linemen in front of him, to the side of him, and he was likely trying to play it safe early in the football game. And honestly, I think Carr did quite a good job. Having 3 broken ribs right now, we know he had that AC joint sprain. He's been dealing with concussion protocol throughout the whole entire season, and in this game, he was getting cracked, he was getting hit as he is thrown, he's getting pressured, and he was still able to hang there in the pocket, make some moves, and get some key conversions, and even give his players a chance on key downs. The Saints went for it 3 times on 4th down. One of them was after that Chris Olave drop we mentioned on 3rd down, but Carr tries to hit Johnson here, and Johnson seems like he's not sure where Carr is going with the football. Carr looks a little pissed off there. Seems like miscommunication is killing this team on key downs. And another time on 4th down in Rams territory, Carr barely even has a chance to get a 3-step drop. He is instantly sacked. There's no chance in hell if you're losing the trench game like that. And maybe it makes sense that PFF had 3 of the lowest graded offensive players of the Saints, all on the starting offensive line. Tight end Juwan Johnson has not had a great year. He has definitely underperformed, but also battled with injuries. He had some trouble on another critical 4th down. I don't like this play design. I don't like what's going on here. You're doing a drag drag route on 4th and 7, you're expecting the tight end to break a tackle, but he's a big guy and definitely capable of doing it, and Carr gave the dude a chance to make a play, and he was unable to break enough tackles here. Later on, you saw him come into form and show what he could do, breaking multiple tackles, helping the Saints march down the field, and then eventually getting a big touchdown. Carr had a few key incompletions that were on him, a little bit inaccurate, ball slipping out of his hands, and then the interception while he was hit while he was thrown, but outside of that, it was a pretty clean game, and the Saints ultimately had a chance to win this game. Thanks to special teams getting a key block, a blocked punt late in the game for the New Orleans Saints, JT Gray making an amazing play, the Saints had a shot and they were able to score a touchdown to A.T. Perry, then get the 2-point conversion, and that moment, it really did seem like the Saints could make a comeback, only down 1 possession with 4 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, no timeouts though. Unfortunately, after that 2-point conversion, that would be the last time the New Orleans Saints offense would take the field. And the defense, like we mentioned earlier, got bailed out at times, forcing the Rams to a field goal because the Rams self-inflicted with drops, errant throws, but for the most part, the defense got their ass completely whooped. I see a lot of people criticizing head coach Dennis Allen because he's the defensive guy, he's the defensive play caller. But at the same time, I'm looking at this Saints defensive line, seeing Matthew Stafford just have all day to throw. Some people want to blame the secondary, but the secondary really can only cover for so long, and if you give Matthew Stafford so much time, eventually he is going to hit some of these great receivers wide open. Sean McVay was scheming some dudes open, and it felt like the Saints could not do nothing. They could not stop the run, they could not create a pass rush. The Saints would attempt an onside kick. A lot of people criticized this decision, but when you saw most of the game, it seemed like the best shot for the Saints defense was to have a shorter field and try to stop the Rams that way and hope maybe that the Rams miss a field goal. That happened earlier on in the game. But it was in this key moment when the Saints could have maybe gotten a stop to put their offense in a chance to tie the game when Cam Jordan went off sides, and it sucks when a veteran player, a guy who's a captain on the team, messes up in a penalty area, a discipline area. That was unfortunate. But there are some Saints fans out there kind of fueled by the Derek Carr hater Raiders fans who want to blame everything on the quarterback. I don't know how you look at this game and see that. The Saints definitely lost this game in the trenches. The offensive line could not even run block to help Kamara, and they definitely couldn't pass block all the time. The D-line got completely worked and now seems like a huge need, and this defensive team now seems like a liability for the New Orleans Saints. And it just feels like some of the players on the Saints who you expected to be blue chip players heading into this season, people like Tyrann Mathieu, people like Demario Davis, people like Cam Jordan, and people like Michael Thomas, who's now been a head case on social media, and people like Alvin Kamara, who was barely able to average 2 yards a carry in this past game. All these people have had great careers in the NFL, and this was a season when it seems like the Saints are banking on them being the star players that they are, but ultimately it was pretty clear to see them get outplayed in this game in terms of their own athleticism. So overall, I think Dennis Allen has done a good job with this defense, considering the fact that it's made up primarily of players on their latter years and also a lot of unproven players due to some injuries in the Saints secondary. That is why the owner Gail Benson and the general manager Mickey Loomis are likely planning to stay with Dennis Allen for the foreseeable future and quarterback Derek Carr. Ian Rappaport somewhat confirmed this today.
My understanding is that Dennis Allen is in a good spot. They're not getting out of where they are anytime soon. You have Derek Carr fully guaranteed for next year. Could they move on? I don't know. I don't think they'd want to, but it's expensive if they decide to.
It does not seem like the owner and GM are going to cater to the mob that's upset about how the season plays out. It seems like some Saints fans are nostalgic for the early prime of some of the key players on this team today, but these players have definitely declined over time, and this is not the Super Bowl roster that many people around the NFL thought it could be. Despite this fact, the Saints have a great chance to still make the playoffs due to how crappy and how shitty their division, the NFC South, is. If the Saints go out there and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and go out there and beat the Atlanta Falcons to end the season, they have an over 70% chance to make the playoffs in 2023. The Buccaneers are going to be playing the Jags this Sunday. If they lose that game, that definitely helps the New Orleans Saints. Let's say everything didn't work out, but the Saints kept Dennis Allen and Derek Derek Carr and when to build around them. And that's what I think would happen if things don't work out with the playoffs. The Saints are going to try to retool and build around Dennis Allen and Derek Carr. That is what's going to happen. Carr is fully guaranteed until next year, a little bit the year after. And honestly, the Saints are probably going to restructure that contract to make him even more guaranteed. We've already heard Ian Rappaport talk about their commitment to Dennis Allen. The Saints may move off of some players, though, who may not be that effective anymore. And the contract does have an out, and that is with Alvin Kamara, who does make some posts on social media. Doesn't seem like the happiest guy in New Orleans anyways. Maybe he wants to part ways and thinks that he could do better somewhere else. If he really is unhappy, that's totally a possibility, and the Saints would not be in too much trouble if a team would be willing to trade for the guy. The question is, will a team trade for a running back? Running back market is devalued a lot these days, and Alvin Kamara is 28, going to be 29 in the future. If the Saints did release him next year, they would save $11 million but eat $17 million overall in dead money over the next 2 seasons, and that would be the same scenario if they traded the guy. Maybe they could work out something for another team to eat more of that contract. Either way, they will be eating some dead money overall by moving on from Alvin Kamara, but not too much. We will see what the Saints will decide to do with their team if they don't make the playoffs or if they do make the playoffs. Let me know in the comments below if you think they have a shot to make the playoffs, beating the Bucks, beating the Falcons. And if they don't make the playoffs, what do you think they're going to do in the offseason? I believe they're going to build around Carr and Dennis Allen. Every indication is telling me that. The financials are telling me that. I think ultimately they're going to try to get some support in the trenches, and it seems like they may have to look into getting a new running back some opportunities. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you have not yet. Subscribe to this channel for more NFL content from me, Wi-Fi Willie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.